Hey, before we start, that moment in the story, we've seen it happen too often. My mom works in an office and stories like this hit home. This isn't just video for views, it's based on real emotions, real patterns, and things that actually happen. The goal? So you can see yourself in it and never let someone else write your story for you. All names, companies, and details are fictional and changed.
The moment Jared yanked the HDMI cord from my docking station and plugged it into his own, I knew he was about to humiliate someone. I just didn't think it'd be me. He didn't even ask for the room, just marched into Friday's stand up, coffee in one hand, ego in the other, and said, "Let me show you what real modernization looks like." The screen lit up, our DevOps team froze, and then I watched, stone faced, as he typed delete module A17 thorn spin py my module. The spine. Gone in 5 keystrokes and a smirk. That was the code I wrote during my 3rd trimester, back when the office coffee machine sputtered like an old Buick and we had to debug CI pipelines between fire drills and baby kicks. The same module that handled 3-layer encryption for our enterprise clients. The same one that OrionWorks flagged in every single diligence meeting as non-negotiable infrastructure. He didn't just delete code, he torched the damn foundation and lit his dad's retirement on fire. Before we go any further, take 2 seconds, hit subscribe, and like the video. 97% of people who hear these stories never do either, but it really motivates the team and helps us keep dropping these bombs. Okay, back to the story. Let me rewind a little. I joined Virion back in the weird early days, before our name even showed up on tech blogs, when Martin Gael still wore socks with holes in them and wrote back-end routes on napkins. I wasn't flashy. I didn't push for headcount or throw buzzwords around like confetti. I built systems. Quietly. Cleanly. I was the one who figured out how to mask user credentials without breaking session persistence. The one who wrote the internal failover sequence that's still used, was still used by half the infrastructure. People said I didn't look like a lead engineer. I didn't care. I wasn't trying to look like anything. I was trying to make sure your login tokens didn't get hijacked by a script kiddie running curl commands from a dorm room. Martin understood that. He backed me. Called me his silent backbone. Didn't matter if Jared, the golden boy from Stanford, understood. Martin made one promise when OrionWorks came knocking. They'd only sell if the architecture stayed in one piece. That meant me. That meant my modules. That meant the spine stayed intact. OrionWorks did their homework. Their engineers ran deep compliance reviews, brutal architecture audits, stress tests on server loads that made my laptop wheeze like an asthmatic pug. I was looped into every call, every dev diagram, every late-night Slack ping. At one point, their VP of engineering looked me dead in the eye on a glitchy Zoom call from a Tokyo hotel room and said, "We proceed only if you stay post-acquisition." I flagged that conversation in writing, twice. Sent it straight to Jared after he got his shiny new title, Chief Innovation Officer, which is just code for Dad made me important. He didn't reply. Not once. Instead, he promoted a junior dev from UI to internal compliance auditor and assigned her to validate back-end legacy modules for redundancy. Redundancy. I should have walked then, but I didn't. I just smiled, archived the email, and started exporting logs. You see, I wasn't just documenting code. I was documenting history. Every version, every patch, every git commit signed with my key, timestamps, notes, usage metrics, internal dependencies, client-side interactions, legal coverage under the 2021 custodian clause that I personally negotiated when they tried to cut my bonus during COVID. I held the receipts before he even knew what a subnet mask was. The night before that stand-up, I stayed late, reviewed everything one more time, combed through integration reviews, cleaned the audit trail. I even made a backup for a few engineers who I respected, just in case someone else tried to use my work and pretend they'd written it. Then I slept 4 hours, made burnt toast, and walked into that meeting like it was just another Friday. And then Jared did what Jared always wanted to do. He made it about himself. And the second that module disappeared from the mainframe, my phone buzzed. OrionWorks. Their recruiter didn't even wait for me to say hello. "Allison Redmond?" they asked. This is she. "You still interested in the CTO offer we discussed?" I stepped out of the conference room as Jared kept talking to the team like he was Moses coming down from the damn mountain. Yes, I said. I accept. You ever hear a toddler bang pots together and call it a symphony? That was Jared's idea of integration review. The moment OrionWorks kicked off due diligence, they sent in a surgical strike team of engineers who asked real questions, deep ones. What's your fallback for auth sync failure during a mid-deploy rollback? Can the SSO bridge handle a region-wide AWS outage without session bleed? I didn't answer with fluff. I answered with heat maps, thread trees, annotated failover diagrams, and logs so detailed they made their senior architect whistle. They weren't just impressed, they were borderline dependent. One of them even joked, "This backend breathes better than our lungs." I knew the stakes. OrionWorks wasn't acquiring code. They were acquiring continuity. Me. They didn't want shiny UI or Jared's weekly buzzword salad. They wanted systems that held when servers caught fire. That's why I made the call, weeks earlier, to update the custodian clause in my contract. Nobody asked me to. I just knew how this would go. They laid it out plainly. We move forward only if your lead engineer agrees to stay post-acquisition. No lead, no deal. That was said over Zoom, but I recorded it anyway. Legal didn't blink when I added the transcript to the diligence archive. I flagged it, twice, in my internal report and emailed it directly to Jared. First time, I said, "For your awareness." Second time, I said, "This is binding." You'd think a guy whose net worth is entirely tied to daddy's vesting schedule might read his emails. He didn't respond. No reply, no emoji, not even a damn thumbs up. Instead, he looped in Kimberly. 25, smart, no doubt. But she was UI UX and had only been on back-end rotation for 6 weeks. Jared gave her a new title, Internal Audit Compliance Liaison, then sent her a list of my modules with one instruction: identify redundant legacy systems. And wouldn't you know it, within 48 hours, I got a Slack ping asking, "Hey, do we really still need A17 Thornspin? Can't OAuth handle this now?" Thornspin wasn't just a module. It was the failsafe that rebuilt broken token chains during asynchronous node loss. It was the system that saved us when AWS Europe West went dark, and a whole finance client's session pool tried to dump into the void. It wasn't a relic. It was the safety net behind every other module they thought was shiny. But sure, go ahead, Kimberly, rip it out, see what happens. That's when I started exporting logs. I didn't get loud. I didn't run to Martin or scream in Slack. I just opened my secure archive, activated the mirror repo I'd maintained since 2021, and began documenting. Every change, every access log, every time Jared pushed something live without peer review, every time his optimization broke a dev sandbox, Git commits, code diff logs, auth history, all clean, all traceable. And every one of my modules, watermarked. Not in the code, because that's amateur hour, but in the behavior. Session timers, sleep jitter patterns, log rotation thresholds. Nobody else knew what to look for. But I did. I watched them circle like buzzards, pecking at the wrong meat. Jared was busy pitching a new dev rebirth strategy to the board, telling them our backend would be 90% rewritten by Q2. He used phrases like AI refactor. He once told the marketing team that React can handle backend now. I wish I was making that up. Meanwhile, OrionWorks kept checking in. How stable is your fallback? What's your RTO on backend token regen? Who wrote the encryption sequence around session bridges? Answer: me, and me. And I didn't just write it, I proved it. Audit trails, integration test results, signed code packages, and a sidecar process that no one even knew existed unless they followed the logs like breadcrumbs. Jared didn't ask. He didn't see. He thought deleting the wrapper meant killing the engine. And me? I just kept smiling. Because every time they ignored my warning, every time they bypassed my diagrams for some dashboard Jared got from a Medium article, I added another entry to my private report. And the moment they pulled Thornspin from staging, the alarms weren't mine. They were OrionWorks. Friday morning. Stand-up was dragging. People fidgeting, laptops half-closed, someone quietly chewing through a protein bar like it was a hostage negotiation. I was mid-sentence walking through the latest integration results when the glass door swung open like it owed Jared rent. He strolled in without eye contact, without a greeting. Just that same smug energy he always carried when he thought he was the smartest man in a room full of people who actually did the work. A few people straightened in their chairs. A couple looked down. Kimberly's face turned to drywall. He didn't ask for the floor. He didn't say a word. Just walked up to the center table, unplugged my HDMI, slid in his own laptop, and cast his screen like a magician unveiling a trick. Terminal open. Root access. Everyone froze. "Let's talk modernization," Jared said, like he was pitching a TED Talk instead of about to commit intellectual arson. He typed fast, too fast for someone who supposedly re-architected an entire system overnight. And then I saw it. A17 Thorn Spin, B34 Encrypt Wrap, F21 Session Mirror. 3 modules, all mine, all critical, all highlighted. He hit delete. The screen blinked. The room didn't breathe. "Obsolete," Jared said, casually sipping from his overpriced cold brew. "Redundant, actually. Thanks for your service, but we're moving in a more modern direction." You could hear the fans in the HVS kick on. That's how quiet it got. My hands were still resting on my laptop. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I didn't even ask who cleared the access override, because I already knew. Jared had been quietly escalating his credentials behind the scenes. He didn't care about protocol or peer review. He wanted a stage, so I gave it to him. I stood, calm, no theatrics. I closed my laptop slowly, slid it into my bag, and looked at no one in particular. Just one breath in, one breath out. Then my phone buzzed in my back pocket. I pulled it out and stepped into the hallway. Behind me, I heard someone whisper, "Wait, did she just—" I didn't hear the rest. "Allison Redmond?" the voice on the phone asked. It was the recruiter from Orion Works, Ray, the one who wore blazers like armor and who once said, "We don't hire people we can't trust with disaster." "Yes," I said. My voice didn't shake. The board approved. "We're ready if you are." I glanced through the glass at Jared, still talking, still pointing at nothing. A man who thought lines of code could be replaced with attitude and a freshly minted hoodie. I accept. Ray didn't even pause. "Welcome aboard, CTO." I hung up, walked back into the room. Jared finally noticed me. He flashed that rehearsed, condescending grin. "Don't worry, we'll transition your tasks to someone more agile." I nodded once. Not to him, just to myself. Then I turned and walked out, leaving Jared standing there, gloating over a skeleton he didn't know was missing its spine. An hour later, the office door slammed so hard the blinds rattled like bones. Martin Gael didn't walk in. He detonated. No blazer, no tie, just a face full of blood pressure and a voice loud enough to shut down the entire bullpen. He stormed past reception like it didn't exist, blew by product, and rounded into DevOps with a fury I hadn't seen since the day AWS misrouted all our West Coast traffic during a client demo. But this wasn't infrastructure rage. This was legacy rage. Founder rage, father rage. He locked eyes with Jared and didn't even bother with pleasantries. Why the hell did Orion Works just cancel the acquisition? The bullpen went dead silent. A couple of engineers glanced over their monitors, then immediately regretted it. You could feel the air tighten, like everyone instinctively held their breath. Jared leaned back in his chair, spinning a pen like he was in a high school debate team. "Because we don't need them," he said, smug as ever. "We've rebuilt everything internally. Faster, leaner, more agile." He shot a quick look around like he expected applause. No one moved. Martin blinked once. "You did what?" Jared gestured to the shared dashboard like a guy showing off a fancy new lawnmower without realizing the house is on fire. "Legacy code was bloating our stack. We're refactoring from the ground up. AI-optimized backend. GPT-validated workflows. Modular flexibility. It's the future, Dad." Martin's voice dropped into a dangerous quiet. "Pull the build." The CTO, Vincent, looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Which environment?" "All of them," Martin snapped. "Staging, QA, dev. I want to see exactly what's running now." Vincent gave a reluctant nod and started typing. The system spun. Load meters flickered. The dashboard populated. Then came the errors. Red. Everywhere. First, encryption layers failed. Then, user credential masking, session token regeneration, log pipeline backups. The real-time telemetry loop that filtered anomalies for our top-tier clients Gone. All of it. All tied to the modules Jared had purged like rotting drywall. But that drywall held the damn house up. Vincent's voice cracked. Looks like we're missing 3 foundational modules from the backbone layer. Martin didn't take his eyes off the screen. Which ones? A17, Thornspin, B34 Encrypt Wrap, F21 Session Mirror. Jared stiffened, the realization flickering across his face like a power outage. That's not possible. Kimberly and we validated everything. They were legacy, unused. Vincent scrolled through the logs, his hands shaking. Legacy? Jared, these are core dependencies. Half our services piggyback off these wrappers. They're not even direct calls. They're sidechain processes. Pull one and the whole API stack collapses. Martin's hands curled into fists. Tell me you backed them up. Jared's silence was answer enough. Martin exhaled, long and sharp, then turned toward the room. We promised OrionWorks a system with proven stability. We gave them an aneurysm in code form. No one dared speak. Then, almost too soft to hear, one of the interns mumbled from across the bullpen. Redmond built those. Martin turned toward the voice. What? The intern looked like a deer in front of a freight train. I was shadowing her before she left. She showed me how Session Mirror self-heals. Said it's like an immune system for tokens. She coded that from scratch. Said it took her 5 years to get it that stable. Jared's jaw flexed, but he stayed silent. Martin just stared at the dashboard, at the system his son had gutted, at the ruins of his legacy, blinking in red error messages and memory leaks. Then, finally, he whispered, like the words, physically hurt, you deleted the spine. Legal was in our office by 3 p.m. 2 associates and a senior counsel who looked like she hadn't blinked since the Clinton administration. They didn't waste time. No pleasantries, no coffee, just, we need full Git access and internal documentation logs for the past 6 quarters. Every module, every commit, every credentialed user. Jared tried to step in and play C-suite. The senior counsel didn't even look at him. We're not here to argue. We're here to quantify liability. That's when the temperature dropped. They pulled up our internal GitLab and immediately zeroed in on the modules Jared had deleted. Their names were already highlighted in a shared internal memo flagged for acquisition dependencies. It wasn't subtle. Each module had its own history, time-stamped, peer-reviewed, deployment logs, change approvals, digital signatures, and at the top of each commit chain, the same author tag repeated like a drumbeat. Redmond. The legal team dug deeper. Audit trails, continuous integration logs, access escalations. One of the associates raised an eyebrow and muttered, "She documented everything. This is a textbook compliance footprint." I could have told them that, but I didn't need to. My documentation spoke louder than I ever did. Then the real knife came out. They opened the 2021 custodian clause addendum. It was buried in a contract no one had touched in 2 years, likely because everyone assumed it was boilerplate. Clause 9.4b. Removal or deletion of any critical infrastructure module shall nullify pending acquisition terms if said module was architected by a named custodian. The associate highlighted the definition line beneath it. Named custodian, Allison Redmond. Coverage hikaidintai period, January 2021, December 2024. Modules qualifying, A17, B34, F21, L02. Silence. Jared shifted in his chair, sweating through his branded quarter zip. That clause was theoretical. It was for contingency only. Senior counsel shut him down cold. It was binding, and it was triggered. OrionWorks had that clause mirrored in their term sheet. They were made aware your team deleted 3 protected modules. They canceled within 6 minutes. Martin sat on the edge of the table, unmoving, staring into the logs, reading my notes line by line like scripture. The custodian clause was in effect, the lawyer continued, and Allison Redmond is the named custodian, which means your son not only violated internal policy, he tanked a $360 million acquisition by triggering a kill switch clause you agreed to uphold. Jared's mouth opened, then closed. No one saved him. The lawyer turned to Martin. You'll want to notify your investors before the quarter ends. There may be shareholder repercussions. Martin didn't nod. He didn't blink. He just asked quietly, "Did she know this would happen?" The lawyer shrugged, but her eyes were sharp. "She didn't stop it. That's the same thing." And that's when it sank in. Not just for Jared, but for every suit in that room. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't fought back. I hadn't leaked anything, threatened anyone, or caused a scene. I'd just written code, documented it, protected it, and then walked out, knowing the trap had already been set. The only thing Jared had contributed was stepping directly into it. The call was scheduled for 4:30 p.m. sharp. No buffer, no warm-up chatter. Just a sterile invite from OrionWorks M&A legal team titled Discussion, Term Sheet Withdrawal. Everyone who mattered was on it. Martin, Jared, legal, the board liaison, our shell-shocked CTO, and 2 OrionWorks execs who had once been our golden ticket. The energy in the room was glacial. Jared sat like a ghost in the corner, suddenly allergic to eye contact. Martin leaned forward, elbows on the table like he could physically hold the deal together through posture alone. The screen flickered on. OrionWorks Chief Strategy Officer, Aaron Malik, appeared. No small talk. Just a steely look and a sigh that might as well have been a gavel drop. "Let's begin," she said, eyes like scalpels. Martin leaned in. "We understand there's concern, but we'd appreciate clarification before anything's finalized." Aaron blinked once. "Concern?" She opened a file on her end. "You fired your custodian, deleted 3 protected modules, breached a clause in your own acquisition alignment framework, and now you're asking for clarification?" Martin's voice cracked just slightly. "We're willing to rebuild, reverse the decision, bring back the modules." "You can't rebuild what you didn't understand to begin with." Aaron replied coldly. Thornspin wasn't just code. It was system memory, behavior sync, fault shielding. Your current team can't even identify what its telemetry layer did, let alone replicate it. Jared finally spoke, voice low. "We can recover the backups, maybe even restore full functionality." She cut him off. "Stop. You didn't just delete modules, you deleted your own credibility, and you triggered our kill clause." Martin paled. "What clause?" Aaron didn't flinch. Section 3.1, Custodial Continuity. OrionWorks' offer is contingent on retention and continued authority of named custodian during and after acquisition period. That clause is not conditional. It is core. Silence blanketed the room. Even the HVAC sounded like it held its breath. "Our due diligence team spent 4 months verifying that your system architecture worked because of one reason. Redmond, you removed her. Without consulting us, without notifying us, and now, because of your internal carelessness, we're exposed." Martin's hands curled slowly on the table. "Your offer was tied to one condition," Aaron continued. "Continued custodianship. That's now off the table." Martin opened his mouth, closed it. Aaron narrowed her eyes. "Let me be perfectly clear. This isn't a temporary delay. There is no revised term sheet. There will be no new proposal. OrionWorks has terminated acquisition interest, permanently." She ended the call. The screen went dark. No one moved. Not for 10 seconds. Not for 20. Then Martin slowly reached forward and clicked his laptop shut. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just stood, looked at Jared for one long, soul-emptying second, and walked out of the room like something inside him had finally and quietly broken. That night, after I'd fed the dog, taken a long shower, and stared at my living room wall for half an hour too long with a glass of wine that tasted more like peace than Merlot, the email came through. I almost didn't check it. The notification lit up my phone while I was scrolling past a video of a raccoon stealing a hot dog. Life's weird like that. Chaos and closure always arrive in the same minute. Subject: discreet consulting, short-term engagement. From Martin Gael, not Jared. Of course not Jared. He was probably too busy Googling how encryption actually works. The message was brief, almost timid. "Allison, I understand this may be inappropriate given the circumstances, but would you be willing to consult on a short-term basis, discreetly, to help stabilize the system? I'm open to structuring compensation at your discretion." There it was. Not an apology, not even a real acknowledgement of what went wrong. just a quiet hand reaching back through the wreckage, hoping I might still be within grabbing distance. I didn't respond. I forwarded the email directly to OrionWorks. No commentary, no explanation. Just subject line. Request from Virion Technologies. Their reply came within 20 minutes. We're aware of their outreach. As per your pending agreement, we'd prefer you not engage in any form of collaboration with Virion, formal or informal. We are still open to further discussions, with you exclusively. It was polite, measured, but the subtext was ironclad. You're with us now. Let them drown. And I was fine with that. The next morning, I signed my contract. Digital pen. Time-stamped at 7:42 a.m., I poured myself a cup of coffee while the PDF loaded the final confirmation screen. Title: Chief Technology Officer, North American Systems Architecture Base, $710,000 equity, vesting 3-year, 1.8% Class B bonus structure. Aggressive, tied to patentable modules and executive retention. Start date. Immediate Ray, my recruiter, followed up with a celebratory Slack emoji and a message that read, "We told them we were only buying the bones if they came with the brain. Welcome home." Home. That word hit a little harder than I expected. I didn't reply to Martin. I didn't need to. He knew the answer the second I didn't write back. Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. Virion's quarterly board meeting, usually a dull parade of spreadsheets and pre-baked jargon, had the emotional tone of a funeral where everyone knew who was to blame, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Except Martin. He sat at the head of the table, tie missing, shirt wrinkled, hair uncombed like he'd slept in his office, or not at all. The man who once joked about living in spreadsheets hadn't touched his laptop since Friday. Instead, he just stared at his legal pad, scribbling something over and over in the margins like he was trying to remember what solid ground felt like. Jared, of course, strutted in like a man whose name was etched on the glass outside. Navy blazer, hair freshly styled, designer loafers clicking confidently against marble floors that had once carried better men. He greeted 2 board members, shook the CFO's hand, then sat down and cracked open his laptop like he was about to save the company he nearly killed. Martin didn't even look at him. The meeting started with formalities. A review of the sudden collapse of the OrionWorks acquisition, an overview of system instability events from the DevOps team, polite terms for what had essentially been a digital self-immolation. Then Martin raised a hand. Silence. He turned to legal. "Do you have the term sheet?" The legal head, a tired man named Greer, who had the voice of a disappointed grandfather, nodded. "Yes, sir. The final signed term sheet from OrionWorks, archived and time-stamped." Martin leaned back in his chair. "Please read the clause about custodial continuity, the one their chief strategy officer referenced." Greer cleared his throat and flipped to the page. Clause 3.1, custodial continuity. The acquisition agreement shall remain in force only under the condition that the party known as the named custodian remains employed in authority and in control of all covered infrastructure modules through the date of acquisition close. Jared shifted, smirked faintly. "That's not unusual. Most firms want some sort of retention clause." Martin didn't look at him. "Keep reading." Greer glanced at the room, then read the line that detonated the meeting. Named custodian A. Redmond. The oxygen left the room. Jared's smirk dissolved mid-frame. You could see the moment it happened, his shoulders stiffening, breath catching, neck twitching slightly like his collar had turned to barbed wire. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Just a blink. Slow. Hollow. Martin didn't move, didn't speak, didn't have to. The boardroom, once full of power, became a tomb. You could hear someone's pen fall. A water glass shifted. The air conditioner hummed like it was embarrassed to be running. One of the board members, a woman who had defended Jared during the previous quarter's leadership review, cleared her throat. "So, the modules he deleted..." Martin cut her off without looking. "Were protected. Critical. Legally bound to the acquisition and tied directly to her custodianship." He finally turned to Jared. "What exactly," Martin asked slowly, "did you think redundant meant?" Jared didn't answer, because there wasn't an answer that would unburn that bridge. 2 weeks later, a new envelope arrived at my door. Not a knock, not a courier, just a slim folder slid under the threshold like it was afraid to wake the house. Inside, a revised term sheet from Orion Works. But this one didn't mention Virion at all. It was addressed to me, individually, personally. They weren't interested in acquiring the company anymore. The drama had tainted the well. But the code, the infrastructure, the spine, they still wanted it, just not on Viren's terms. The new offer was clean. Exclusive IP licensing, direct custodial rights, transfer of architecture schema under a rolling access provision, with quarterly review and proprietary execution authority. In short, they'd pay for the right to use my work, but only with me in control. I read it twice, then I signed, for a fee, a generous one, and just like that, the spine was back online. But not for Jared, not even for Martin, for the system, for the people who needed it to run, not the ones who thought they owned it because their name was stitched into a polo shirt. The ripple effect came fast. Virion issued a shareholder update 3 days later. Most skimmed it. But buried deep in the legal appendix beneath budget adjustments and leadership restructuring notes, there it was. Critical modules reintegrated under custodian license agreement, external. That was me. Not named, not thanked, not acknowledged with so much as a keystroke of gratitude. But they paid, and they licensed it. Jared was let go quietly. No announcement, no cake in the break room. One Monday morning, his office was just empty. The whiteboard still read, Phase 2, full rebuild in thick red marker. No one erased it. Martin resumed daily operations, though he walked slower now, spoke softer, like a man who had finally learned the difference between legacy and noise. As for me, I got a new office, one with a door that closes, a team that listens, and a view that stretches past the noise. I don't talk about what happened. I don't name names. But sometimes in interviews, people ask how I handle betrayal in engineering, and I just smile. Because I don't. I designed for it.